I'm Ruth Molman from the Farmington Hills Historic District Commission, and I'm here with Mr. and Mrs. Barber. Mr. Barber was involved in almost all of the plumbing that went into Farmington when it got plumbed. The thing that made the 20th century, according to certain historians, was the fact that they had indoor plumbing and central heating, which was the major change from what the farm districts and the original things were like. So I will now turn to Mr. and Mrs. Barber, who are going to tell us what it was like when they were doing all sorts of good things here in Farmington. Now, Mr. Barber, you wrote a book here with all of the things that you did. What was the most outstanding of the plumbing that you did?
Probably the downtown shopping center. It was a huge job. I had about 30 floor drains to put in because they had to go exactly where the coolers went so they would drip, not cause any wetness on the floor. And when the man from A&P come out to check them, I had one off by 3 inches. The rest were all right where he wanted them. He said it's the best job I ever seen. That made me feel good.
And you did all of the houses. What year was it that they made them get rid of the
Sewers?
The septic tanks?
When they put the sewage system in for Farmington, they were partially right and partially wrong. They put it through a septic tank first and then put what was left out into the sewer. Now, some of them were really difficult, like the one under the Cook building. The only way you could get a hose down there to pump the tank out was to go through that little grating that was about 3 foot long and a foot wide. So we got in there and we knocked the tank down and we tied it together with a 6-inch cast iron line, and it was that. The one for the bank on the corner was a huge one. It took 3 or 4 truckloads of sand just to fill it up, and we got that one. The worst one was a house that Henry Otis lived in, right there at the corner where they sell fruit and stuff on Saturday morning. It was so heavy, that stuff in there, you could actually stand with your feet inside of the septic tank without falling in.
Wow.
That was the worst one. So we did about, I'd say 50 of them. And it involved getting a backhoe in and sand, filled it up.
You filled the old septics with sand?
Filled them up.
They're still there?
Yeah, with no top on them. There's a bar on 8 Mile Road, and the neighbor behind the bar, the guy working for me, he didn't put enough sand in, and she almost fell in.
Oh.
But we went over and apologized and straightened everything out. Other than that, we had no troubles.
Things. It made such a difference for life in Farmington. Did you do the estates? They were the first ones to get plumbing in.
Well, they all had plumbing when I started.
It was just septic tanks.
They had septic tanks and hard water. Oh my gosh. Every house in this town, if you went in the basement, you would see a bypass where they bypassed the city water over here up on the Cemetery Hill. And before that even, they had wells down where they played football. And they had big pumps down there. And it was hard.
It was red.
Red, well, iron. It was full of iron, yeah.
It tasted great.
Yeah, there's a lot of old timers that
Had their iron.
yeah.
Now we don't get it.
Let's see now. You grew up in
I was born, my folks were living down in town near the medical center on Kirby. And my dad took a ride out Grand River. And when he got past Southfield, there was nothing. And he said, "This is where I'd like to live." So he borrowed $500 from his mother. He bought 2.5 acres on Purling Brook and commenced to build his house. They used teams of horses to dig it out because nobody had a backhoe then. And there's a little creek that runs across the front of the property. And he had to come in a farm, Billy Winkert's farm on 8 Mile Road, and just to move in. Well, in '29, I think we were in there. And of course, he didn't have doors on some of the rooms, and he was working at the same time at plumbing, and we finally got it done. Well, we stayed there till I went in the Army in 1942. And when I come out of the Army, I come back to that house on Purling Brook and stayed there a while till Marie and I rented a little house. It was only 20 by 20, no water, no plumbing, just a pot.
Right after the war.
I used to carry water from my parents' house in a milk can, and we dumped the rest of the stuff on digging holes. And it was only $20 a month, but we were married. And
Mr.
that was
Cole owned it. Mr.
yeah,
Cole
Cameron Cole owned it. And
bar.
It's been a good start because we've been married 68 years this coming April.
Well, what did you do? Well, let's see, you went into the service right after you graduated high school, was it?
I graduated in 1940. My dad didn't have enough work for my brother and myself because we were both helping and learning the plumbing trade. And Homer Coleman, a friend of his son was a friend of me. He worked at the old Graham Page plant. I couldn't tell you where it is, but I worked there 6 months and making aircraft parts. Mm-hmm. And then on her birthday, I took my physical, and one day after Thanksgiving, I was on my way to Fort Custer, Michigan.
Were you married then?
No.
When did you get married?
Oh. I was in Texas down at Camp Maxey, Camp Swift, near Bastrop, Texas. And she surprised me and come down there and
to visit him.
And
see, I met him in high school. I was a freshman and he was a senior.
Oh, at Farmington High School?
Yes. And he got razzed because he was picking on a freshman. And then I went out a couple of times with him, and then I didn't see him again for a couple of years. And then I met him again, and we started going steady, got engaged. So I decided I'd go down to Texas and see him. So we were down there, we decided to get married.
then I was in 2 other camps in Texas, Camp Bowie for artillery practice, and Camp Maxey where I started out. And then after all my training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, they shipped us to New Jersey, Fort Dix. And that's where we got our final inspection, our shots and everything, and then on a boat. 14 days later, we landed in France. Mm. So it was quite a trip.
Yes.
We stayed in France. You want to hear some more?
Yes, please.
We stayed in France for almost 2 months because Patton was going so fast that he run out of gasoline, he ran out of artillery shells, he run out of every food, everything. So they took all our trucks away from us and put drivers and co-drivers on for the Red Ball Express. Well, we didn't have much to do except we had a tent camp there. And our outfit supplied a battalion of artillery, 12 guns. And we hauled gasoline, food, clothing, water, everything they needed, besides dodging airplanes and their artillery. Germans had it too.
They had quite a Air Force, I remember.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
reading.
So and when the war ended, it ended in April. For us, I was 40 miles from Berlin, and the Germans were coming over the Elbe River by the thousands. They didn't want to surrender to the Russians because they knew what the Russians had done to their women. So anyway, we went into the Army of Occupation, and you had points. You had 1 point for each month in the service, 2 for each overseas, 5 for each child, and when you got 59 points, you could go home. Well, it was 7 or 8 or 9 months till I got enough points till I could go home, and I come home.
Well, you came back, you had that little house, and then what did you do?
Then we bought the house on Gill Road.
On Gill Road.
It was a shell.
Yeah.
And we had to finish it.
It was drywalled and electrified, no plumbing, no heating. My dad gave us an oil stove. He had one in the shop. And we kept it warm for a while. And then I eventually put a hot water heating system in. We stayed there, I think, 12 or 13 years. And we finished the upstairs up and made 2 more bedrooms up there. And now we had 4 children. And it was nice, but we didn't have any water. You know, in spring, in this early summer, the well would go down. The guy next door was using water all the time. He's probably using water I should have had. And we sold it. And we bought a house in Bel Air because we wanted a basement. We had no basement over there. And
Plus we were close to the school for the kids. They went to Saros.
Right across the street. There's our church. And what was I going to say? We did a lot of improvements over there, built a garage, and we have a pretty nice cozy home there. And we've been there since 1962. So from, you might say, when we bought the house from Helmuth Grave on Gill Road till the time that we, right now, it's probably 70 years, we've been in Farmington, or Farmington Hills, because Gill Road was in Farmington Hills.
We went from a township to a city.
If you drove to Redford, you would see from 8 Mile in Grand River to 7 Mile in Grand River, 2 houses. One was a place where you could have your back manipulated, and then another was a resident. And the other side of Grand River wasn't much more, maybe 2 or 3 buildings. And there's just open fields. That's how fast they built up.
Yeah, they certainly did.
I know my folks moved out in 1928 from Roseville to the farm on Haggerty Road. I can't remember who owned that farm, and we lived there. It was Beet Orchard and that. And then from there, we moved. Let's see, where did we move? I can't remember where we moved. It was in Clarenceville we moved. So because I went to Clarenceville school for a year Well, I don't even know how long we lived on the farm out there because I was 4 years old and I went to kindergarten, so I don't remember too much about that. But then, like I said, then we went to New York during the Depression and stayed with my grandparents for 6 months. Then we come back. That's when I hit all the schools in Farmington Hills and Farmington.
Yeah, they moved the kids around a lot.
Well, no, there was like William Grace, and then you had to go to Noble for the next 4 grades. And when our section, when I moved at one time, I had to go to Clarenceville School. And then when we come back from New York, I had to go to William Grace and then Noble. And then we moved again closer towards town. And I had to go to Farmington School in the 6th and half of the 7th grade. Then I went to Sorrows. Then I finally settled down and went to high school for 4 years.
And that's where you met your husband, who was in high school.
That's what I said, though. Seems like when we were always moving, but it seemed like we knew most every kid because we did go to different schools. Mm-hmm. It was real strange.
Very close community. Now you've become very active in the American Legion.
I did. My dad was commander the year that I got out of the service. I wasn't home yet, but he was so proud of me that he paid my dues. My brother already beat me home. He was in the Air Force. He survived the war. And we had all these old timers, and they were just doing everything for us. They were having fish fries and clam dips and everything, just because they were happy to have their ranks enlarged, because there were only about 35 of them. And right away, my brother run for commander, and he made it. And 2 years later, I run for commander, and I made it. And then I was chaplain 2 years, and I was finance officer for 2 years, and I was adjutant 30 years. An adjutant is a commander's right-hand man. And we had our gala days. This parade they have now in Farmington is nice. I don't go to it because I think there's too many politicians that get in it and want throwing candy around. But we used to meet at the American Legion Hall.
Don't shock anybody now.
And we'd get our all organized, and we would march all the way to the cemetery, all the way up that hill by the water tank, and pay our respects, and walk all the way back to the Legion Hall. Strictly military. And the little kids are running around getting the shells when they shoot the guns and all that stuff.
Now, let's see, for the church, you did the plumbing there too, didn't you?
I worked on the Baptist Manor for over a year on 13 Mile by Glen Oaks Golf Course. And I did the City Hall here in Farmington. I did the credit union, Sorrows Credit Union. They did all the plumbing in that. The first time it was plumbed, now it's been enlarged. I worked at Star Cutter for probably a month on and off when they made their place bigger. And all the houses, the Bel Air wasn't built, started to 55, and they were kind of raw when they first opened them up. They needed softeners and all that stuff. Then the galvanized piping was in the basements, and that started rusting up, and then they had to go to copper, and did a lot of those. Some of the pipes I couldn't get at, and Warner Farms was the same way. And I don't know.
Then you did some of the fancy houses too.
Oh yeah, I did one over in Franklin there that had 7 bathrooms.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Took us a year and a half to do the job.
To do the 7 bathrooms.
Mm-hmm. Had to wrap all the pipes so you wouldn't hear a sound of the water running.
Is the house still there?
Oh, yeah. My dad built that plumbing shop where that Bob's has a place there where you can get chairs reupholstered. Well, my dad built that building in 1940, I think it was. And Bill Moss lived next door to him. That was an old-time Farmington family. And then Doc Davis had a back doctor. He rented that house next door.
Moss's.
Yeah. And then my dad built an addition onto Fred Curcio's oil place, which is, I don't know what that is now, but that was our plumbing shop, and Doc Wingard, the dentist, moved in there. And that was the last place that we had anything going in Farmington.
You did some things over in Heritage Park when it was the Spicer Farm.
Oh, yeah. This is a story in itself. Down by the creek, they had a Vale Kynes pump. That's a trade name for a pump. A double piston. And they pump water out of the creek for that whole Spicer farm and for the big house. And that pipe was in the ground 20 years before my dad started servicing it. And when he moved up north and left the plumbing to us, I took it over. So they'd call me when they were going to Florida, and I'd go over there and I'd get everything organized. I'd drain the pump and find all the places I could let the water out. Well, one year it froze. The pump froze. It was in a little coffin, I called it. And so we sent to Arkansas to get the very same pump. It cost several $1,000s. They had that shipped all the way up here. And when they got it up here, it weighed a half a ton. They had to get horses and stuff and rig it and get it back in there. Well, when we got it going, it put so much strain on the older pipes that they're rupturing themselves, you know. Well, I had to fix all them leaks. And but that was a beautiful place. They had the steps going downstairs, and they had a great big eagle. Right down there was a fountain. And
That's over near the Longacre House.
yeah, and all them bathrooms were a different color.
Yeah, they were pretty. I
One
went
was
through it with
green,
him.
one was blue, one was white. There's 5 of them on the second floor, and one of the toilets broke. Through no fault of mine. I don't know why it broke, but it was in the green bathroom, and I think we put a blue toilet in its place. I asked them first.
That was the Longacre House, and then there was the Spicer House, the little house.
Yeah.
It's in Heritage Park.
But you'd go over there, and Eleanor, we called her Eleanor, and she had sheep, and she might ask you to hold the sheep down while she sheared them.
Oh my.
She'd pay you plumber's wages.
For holding your sheep?
Her brother went over there after I gave up on the maintenance and doing little odd jobs and stuff. Sam went over there, Marie's brother, and he took over. And he worked there a couple of years fixing screens and putting glass in windows that was busted and stuff.
He was her handyman for all the things that a man would do around the house. Frank didn't have time, so he would go over on Saturdays, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the weekends. So he got a job out of it, plus another job.
You have some relatives that came over on the Mayflower.
Four.
Yeah.
I got another one, but they won't give it to me because they don't have enough. You gotta have 6 pages of stuff just to get a certificate. You gotta have birth certificates, death certificates.
Tracing all the way back.
But they're there.
It's a lot of research.
Yeah, well, I got a book on the Babcocks, it's 1,000 pages. I got one on the Shermans, that's 1,000 pages. They're heavy, and if I get a chance, I buy them, you know. And I belong to the genealogy club, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, my dad came to Michigan from New York. Well, he was born in New York, raised in New York, near Buffalo. And he come to Detroit to get a job. And my mother lived in a house with her grandmother. And he lived in a rooming house next door to him. And that's how they got to know each other. So they were married, and gosh, I don't know what year they were married. Must have been 1918, I think. They were married at St. Anne's Church in Detroit.
Oh, that's the St. Anne's is the oldest church
Mm-hmm.
in.
And she went to that church when she was living with her grandmother there. And then from there, they lived in Detroit in different places. And then he moved out to Roseville. He bought a shell of a house and was going to finish it. But the way economy was, he couldn't do it. So he lost that house. And that's, I think, when we moved to Farmington. Out here, he knew somebody that had this big farmhouse, and he told him he could rent it. He just took care of the property. And we used to walk, say, from 10 Mile to Grand River to catch the bus to go to Farmington schools. And that's I don't know how long a stretch it is, but it seemed like it was miles to me. I was little.
Your mother didn't take the station wagon out and take you.
No, but I remember my dad had a touring car with the flaps on it, and lots of times he couldn't get it started. So my two older brothers and my sister and I, we'd go out and we'd start pushing it down the hill. It would go down the hill when it get going, and then it would start. I said, can you imagine 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, I was out there pushing this car. But luckily it was set on a hill. He'd set it on a hill.
So you could go downhill.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of walking when I was a kid. We'd walk to the free shows in Farmington. You knew about them. They had free shows. No?
No, I never heard about those.
Well, they used to have them right on the old town hall building there, on the side of it, and on Friday nights. You come and you'd take your pillow and sit on it and watch the free movies.
Oh.
And then they moved it from there to where that, what was that house that was set way back off the road by Kroger's? They moved it back to that area. I can't remember what it was. It was like an apartment house set way back. And then they started showing them there. Mm-hmm. But we used to walk from 9 Mile to Farmington. When you were walking, there was maybe 15, 20 people walking. Mm-hmm. And you walked on Grand River because there wasn't sidewalks all the way. So you just had to watch out and move over for the cars. There was paths, but that was our treat.
Coming in for the free movies.
Mm-hmm. And right across the street from it, where the movies were, there was a little shop. It was the Old Maid's candy store. There was 2 elderly ladies that run this candy store. And of course, we each got a nickel. You could buy a lot of candy for a nickel. Get 2 or 3 caramels for a penny. And that was our treats.
I thank you so much for coming and bringing us all this information about our city and what it was like and all the marvelous things you did for the city.